Welcome to City Kickboxing. This is the house of pain where City Kickboxing coaches have been plotting the downfall of Kelvin Gastelum in his historic interim UFC title fight against Israel Adesanya. I'm Lightning Mike Angove here with Dan Hooker, and today we're going to take a look at the keys to victory for both fighters in this historic matchup. Alright, Kelvin Gastelum is a southpaw, and the southpaw factor is usually a big factor in fights, but Dan, Gastelum is Israel's fourth southpaw in 5 fights, so that really shouldn't come into play.
No, not at all. So that's probably 2 years that he's been training to beat a southpaw opponent, so that's something he's going to be very familiar with.
And looking at this fight, the clear thing between them is the stature of the two guys. Israel at over 6'3", Gastelum well under 5'10". That reach and height advantage is a critical factor. Now, how will that play out in this fight, and how important is it for Israel to take advantage of it?
Yeah, well, it just makes it very difficult for Kelvin to close the gap on Israel and cover the distance, especially because he's not so good at closing the distance on his opponents. Generally, he just walks into range as opposed to moving his head, staying very agile with his feet and finding a way in. He generally just draws, punches out, eats a few shots and then comes back over the top.
Obviously a big part of the reach factor and bridging the gap is the possibility of Gastelum doubling the impact. If I'm a fighter who's constantly walking forward into range, particularly against a precise striker like Adesanya, there is that chance that Adesanya will take half a step back or step off to one side and double the impact. So I'm walking in, boom, and I catch that, my momentum moving forward, Dan's fist crashing into my face, and that makes it more than 100% punch, and it really does double up on the impact and increase the likelihood of a knockout. So obviously a critical factor in this fight is Adesanya's takedown defense. Gastelum has to go to the wrestling to change it up a little bit to make it so it's not a striking battle. What are the factors in Israel's takedown defense that he needs to maximize and prevent Gastelum from running through him?
Yeah, so Gastelum has a few key ways that he likes to set up his takedown and a few key takedowns that he goes to. So we can cover his go-to takedowns, but it's really something that he hasn't used in quite a while. I don't believe he's scored a takedown in the UFC since 2015 when he was fighting Neil Magny, so it's been a very long time in between drinks since he implemented his wrestling. In his latest fights he's been using it more defensively than offensively, but he does have a couple go-tos. And what he likes to do is he likes to draw out the power hand of his opponent, and he really just relies on them lunging, so then their hips get exposed. He pulls the shot and then enters in for a double leg. So he likes to draw out the punch of his opponent, make them reach, make them lean, then he comes in underneath it. Yeah, once they're leaning and they sacrifice their positioning and they sacrifice their hips. This is not going to be so effective against Israel because he doesn't fall with his punches, or he doesn't lean on his punches. He keeps everything very straight and well balanced. It's only for the opponents that get carried away and they step with their punches, or they lean forwards, or they lean into it and expose the takedown. So I really feel like in this fight, Gastelum's going to have to bring something new to the table and something we haven't seen from him yet.
Okay, and how important is it for Gastelum or how difficult is it for him, since he hasn't been going to his takedown frequently, to reach back into the locker and pull out that state wrestling championship? It's a difficult thing for him to do with such a long time between drinks.
Yeah, it is difficult to do. The muscle memory is not there if you've been doing takedown defense and mainly striking camps. So to go back to an offensive heavy wrestling game is going to be quite different. It relies on a different energy system, so he's going to have to. And he's had a short time between his last camp and this camp to really change his energy system. So I don't think it's something it's going to be as well versed as he would like it to be.
Now, let's say that Gastelum does manage to get in underneath Israel, does manage to secure the takedown. What does Adesanya need to do if his hips are exposed and Gastelum bridges the gap?
Yeah, that's the funny thing about Israel. He's very difficult to get in on, like we've seen in the Derek Brunson fight in the last one. He likes to use these long frames. So when he does change levels and he does shoot, he likes to put them and keep them out. So he saves a lot of energy by not having to go straight to his defensive wrestling, straight to sprawling and defending the takedown. He likes to use these long frames on the shoulder or use the forearm to then again stop his opponent coming in. And then if they do drop under, like in the Brunson fight, when they do drop under, they're going to run into that knee, which he caught Brunson with in the last fight.
And of course his position. He doesn't really want to get taken down in centre ring because it means Gastelum can chain attacks together. If he can work his way back against the cage, he has more time to defend the takedown, turn Gastelum against the cage, get back out into centre ring himself. And finally, if he does get taken down, that brings into play something we haven't seen from Adesanya yet. We haven't seen his get-up game. We haven't really seen how good he is off the back. And I think conditioning is a big part of that. What do you expect we'll see from Adesanya if he does get taken down?
Yeah, he'll be scrambling straight away. He's not very idle when he's on his back. We have seen him throw up a number of submissions in the past, so that gets his opponent weary and gets him to posture up, creating the space for him to then escape.
And a key factor there is to Adesanya's conditioning. If Gastelum is successful, he can maintain top position. Adesanya's going to have to scramble from the bottom and try and get up, and that can wear on a fighter. But as we know, Gastelum's gas tank hasn't always been the best either.
Yeah, he's been worn out in the past. His last loss against Chris Weidman came down to conditioning. Weidman just made him carry his weight for a few rounds, and Gastelum looked extremely exhausted in that fight and gave up a submission.
All right, so Kelvin Gastelum, he is a short, diminutive fighter, very powerful, long left hand. He doesn't throw it short, he actually throws it really long from the southpaw stance. And that's the one thing that he must start landing in order to back Adesanya up. In particular, probably needs to keep it low and at the chest, because Israel Adesanya, he will pull back out of shots, he will make you miss. If he keeps it low, at least the body won't move, and that can set up what is often an underrated punch for a southpaw, which is the right hook. And again, Gastelum has a decent right hook, he throws it long, and he's a guy who has knockout power, isn't he, Dan?
Yeah, and that's in the likes of his win over Michael Bisping. He put him out with one shot, so he has shown that he carries a lot of power.
And 4-ounce gloves, there's no forgiveness in these small gloves. It's not like a boxing glove. You don't have an 8 count. If you hit, you hit, and you've got very, very little time to recover. So Gastelum, he does have a background. Before he became sort of predominantly a striker, he came from a wrestling background, which did help him in terms of his power and his work ethic and his ability to bridge the gap. But he's going to have to reach back into that locker, reach back into his wrestling kit bag in this fight to that state championship pedigree and even his 10th planet black belt in jiu-jitsu. What can we expect from Gastelum in terms of his looking for the takedown and his wrestling ability?
Yeah, it has been a long time since Gastelum came with a wrestling game plan. It would be very early on in his UFC career when he out-wrestled Uriah Hall to win the Ultimate Fighter Championship. But his go-to takedowns are his double leg from each stances. So what he likes to do is get his opponent to throw their backhand and really gets him to reach for it. And what he does is he pulls out of the way. So they're forced to lunge and overextend their hip, stay in the stance. When he stays in the stance and he over-exaggerates his hip, he likes to lunge out of range, change levels, and then enter in for the double leg. So a double leg out in the open after getting his opponent to lunge and he pulls the shot is really his go-to takedown. And
Adesanya obviously switch hits as well, and as you say, Gastelum can throw that takedown or go for that double leg off either leg. In terms of how he sets up the takedowns, obviously he's got to use his hands to create the openings to set up the takedowns and get Adesanya thinking about the hands before he goes to the takedown, or do you think he'll go straight to it?
He kind of walks into distance and then draws some punches out from his opponents. So he's not a good guy at bridging the gap and closing the distance quickly. He kind of just wades forward, walks into distance, gets his opponent to throw shots at him, then he pulls and counters, or pulls and then comes under with the takedown.
So we won't expect him to be moving his head side to side a heck of a lot as he comes in.
No, he just knows his distance very well, and he walks in, and just before they're in the right distance to connect a good punch on him, he stops then, and it's kind of baiting his opponent to reach for him and draw the shots out.
Now Gastelum, how good is his, because range is obviously really important, giving away such a reach advantage, how good is his assessment of range, of where he's at, right at the edge of range, right at the edge of punching and kicking range?
Yeah, he does make a few mistakes. Like, he does get caught with a lot of shots on his way in, but he's quite happy to wear those shots. He rolls with them well, keeps his chin down, shoulders high. He likes to wear them on the shoulders and then comes over. That's where he does his best work, is when his opponent is throwing punches at him, and then he's countering those punches, either over the top with his punches or underneath with his double leg.
How dangerous is that as a strategy against an accurate natural striker like Adesanya?
Very dangerous. That's why I'm thinking that Gastelum's going to have to pull something out of the bag. He's going to have to show us something we haven't seen before from him.
So let's say he's successful, he does manage to get Adesanya reacting to the takedowns. Does that present an opportunity for him to come over the top with his hands again?
Yeah, no, it definitely does. If he has success entering on those takedowns, now Israel has to think about it, and therefore it creates more openings. It's if we see early on, if Gastelum's going for that shot and it really gets stuffed out in the open, then that's a sign that it's going to be a bad night for Gastelum.
Okay, let's say he manages to get Adesanya down on the mat. That top position and maintaining that top position has to be really important because he needs to drain Adesanya to keep him where he's uncomfortable, to keep him off his feet and take advantage of his ability in that top position and perhaps execute some ground and pound.
Yeah, that's what he's going to try and do, but he's going to have to keep a low posture with that. You know, he can't posture up and look for big punches. That creates the openings for the opponent to get back to their feet. He's going to have to stay nice and tight, low down, and just work chipping shots, trying to grind Adesanya down.
Well, there you have it. Those are some of the keys and things to watch out for in Adesanya versus Gastelum, the UFC interim middleweight title, UFC 236 in Atlanta. And don't forget, you can join us at the TAB. I'll be right there hosting a tour and getting right up close and personal to the Adesanya camp and showing you inside tidbits about what goes on in the UFC on Fight Week. Also Fight Week, don't forget the Hangman's tips and his odds on the fighters to watch out for and the guys to back in this historic fight night.